This episode is brought to you by Samsung and the new Galaxy Watch8 Classic powered by Galaxy AI. Percy's coach.
Yep.
He gets into a punch-on with the other coach.
Yeah.
Was it mid-game or?
No, it was quarter time.
Quarter time.
Quarter time. Said, you got to find me a Royce Hart. There's this young bloke, skinny bloke called Stephen Kernan, and I come back and I said to Wes, I found the Royce Hart.
You told me that Dad broke Mick Malthouse's jaw.
I think Mick might have landed one on Dad and Dad's landed one back. Got called to Skase's office and we had to sack 5 players because we lost 5 games in a row. And I said, but what if we don't win a game? We won't have a team.
So he wanted to sack 5 players because you'd lost 5
games in a row, yeah.
Did you have to do it? Shano, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thanks a lot, Dyl. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, how long do you think we've known each other for?
How old are you?
32.
32 years.
32 years. There you go.
Yeah, no, long time. Seen, different stages of your life. So, but I must admit, I did enjoy when you were at the Blues, and basically when I sort of look across the table and see you now, I think, perhaps a lot of it started at the Blues, really, with your interest and the club getting you to do things. So, yeah come a long way, mate.
No, I look back on those times so fondly, and obviously so many memories of yourself, and I feel like I've known you since I can remember. And I'm actually really annoyed that it's taken me this long to get you on the podcast. But I think, to be honest, I'm at a good time now where I can reflect on a lot of those things. And I suppose your story of being in footy, like for those who don't know, you worked with my dad.
Yep, sure did.
And with me, you worked with Sergio, Stephen Silvani, Jack Silvani, and Ben.
And Ben was there, 100%.
You might outlast all of them if it trends the way it does at the moment.
Well, I was a bit upset the other day when your mate Sam Docherty said he can't believe that he left before I have. So
you're honestly a part of the fabric there, not just at Carlton, but the work you've done across the AFL. And I think when you know someone and you know them well, you don't, I suppose, till I've left the game, appreciate how much you've done for me and how much you've done for so many other players out there, and why you're probably, if not the most respected person I've really come across in the football world, and can't wait to sort of have a chat about your story today, mate.
Oh, I appreciate it. But yeah, just been lucky to be in it so long, and you just meet so many great people. So very lucky. Very lucky.
One thing you never told me about, you're a very humble man. One thing you never told me about, because I was speaking to Gary, who's your brother.
Yeah.
You played for 4 state teams yourself, won 4 BNFs. You kicked 5 on the G in a preseason game with the Tigers and didn't make the list after kicking 5 in a preseason game.
I could take you to every spot in the ground.
What happened?
No, those days was the Form 2s or Form 4s, and they could only have 2. And because I'd been away in the state for 4 or 5 years, it made me, I had to be a Form 4.
Like a point system.
And they only had 2 forms, and it was out of me or Rob Wiley. I think Rob Wiley's a much better player than me. But anyway, look, I had a great time, and, that's sort of where I sort of got to know Kevin Sheedy and Mick Malthouse and that. And if I can tell one funny little story of the match, we were playing a practice match down at Mordialloc, and Tony Jewell was coach, and Kevin was late getting to the ground, which was work-related, but Tony sat him on the bench.
This is Sheedy?
This is Sheeds. And she said, when I come on at halftime, I'm going to make trouble for someone. Anyway, halftime comes, and Tony's reading the teams out, and I'm in the forward pocket, and guess who's lined up? Kevin Sheedy. And I can remember he was sitting beside me. I whispered to him, he said, "You're not going to hit me, hey?" He said, "No, I can't hit you." So he clocked David Cloak, and an all-in brawl ended up. So, that's some really good memories. And, Mick and Neil Baum and those guys were just fabulous to the guys that weren't, on the list but trying. So, so some good memories of having a run with the Tigers.
Isn't it amazing, though, like I suppose in the industry of footy, any industry, there's these similarities, but you look at starting out at the Tigers, playing with them in that pre-season sort of period, and I know you tried with them throughout then, but Kevin Sheedy, Mick Malthouse, Rob Wiley.
Yep.
Cloak was out there. Was that for Collingwood, or was that in a pre-season?
That was a pre-season game at Richmond, yeah.
Kevin Bartlett, all these massive names. And then you end up working with half of them 20, 30, 40 years later. Like Rob Wiley, Mick Malthouse, you worked with, obviously, Mick at Western Bulldogs. We'll get to this stuff later. Then you get back to them at Carlton. you're just seeing the same people.
I know footy's it's a small world in lots of ways, but yeah, as I said before, just lucky. You get in, and I remember, Sheeds. He was a big part of me getting into footy with another guy called Max Scales, and just sort of I'll never forget Sheeds saying, just remember, the longer you're in it, you'll get sacked at some stage, and which did happen. And if Kevin can get the sack in a football club, I think any of us can.
100%. I did it twice. I don't know if we'll get to your part, but you've moved around only a little bit, but been obviously with the Blues, Bulldogs, and the Bears up there at the inception of the club. Hey, let's start at the start. So how'd you get involved in, because that year, right, if my research is correct, 79 you did the pre-season, and then you end up working at Carlton at the 79, which was a premiership year.
Yeah. Well, I was a sporting goods rep at the time, and I remember I was up the country, up Gippsland Way, and I got this friend of mine, Max Scales, who was the GM at the Tigers and that at the time, said there's a job going at Carlton and it's you. It's exactly what you should be doing. Anyway, I thought, no, I'd never sort of get it. And anyway, on the way home from the country, I thought, oh, well, give it a crack. And so I put in for it, and I missed out. A guy called Greg Kennedy got the job, who was a ex-Carlton full forward. And anyway, he got the job, and then so that was that. And then just before, I think, round 3 or the second round in 79, I get a phone call from Keith McKenzie to see if I was still interested in the job, because Greg had decided to go back to carpet laying, and which I can still, I speak to Greg a bit, and I still don't know why he'd go back to carpet laying. I can't imagine banging your knee into the thing to push the carpet across the wall. But so round 3, 1979, I'll never forget it. I walked in, and I can still see Wes Loss in the old race with the big long blue coat, and to meet me, he called me Brendan for the first 6 months, which is my cousin who was at Carlton at the time. But really fortunate to get there that first year and walk into a premiership. Like I always felt like I've cheated a bit, because you really sort of had nothing to do with who was there. But it was a great experience, and I was still playing Sundays myself, which helped me sort of get in with the guys pretty well. And that's where it all started.
Who's give us some of the names that are around at that time walking in, and as you said, you're sort of similar to their age as well. And what role was the initial role?
Well, in those days, I was called the promotions officer. So to give you an idea, there was Keith McKenzie was the GM. We had a finance guy, David Allen, a lady in the office, Anne McLeod, and myself. So basically, you're the footy ops, really, recruiting. You played Saturdays, so you sent people off to all different directions. And so I mean, you walk in, and Jeff Southby and Swan Mackay and those sort of people. Jezza. Oh, look, Jezza was full time, and I was just in awe of him. I think I was too frightened to speak to him there for a while. But the good thing is, after a while, he'd grab me and we'd go out and train during the day, because he was captain coach. He didn't do a lot during the training session, so he could watch what was going on. But and then you had the young Jimmy Buckleys and Wayne Arms, Rod Ashman. There was Mark McClure. They were just a great bunch, and I was a bit lucky. Mark's wife was a great friend of Carol, my wife, so that was an easy introduction sort of thing. So, wherever you looked, there was star-studded players, and, Perce Jones, and just so many characters. It was an interesting time.
Get to the promotions of, as you said, footy ops, that sort of role. I want to talk about that, how it was back in the day, in a minute, because around the recruiting drives and getting players to the club, obviously there was no draft back then, but we'll get to that. The 79 season as well, this still, even being around the footy club, Carlton Footy Club for a long time, still marvels at me, and I suppose only recently, how crazy it is to look back at that 4-year period. Yeah. And, you're coming into that as your first sort of, VFL world. Yep. 79, they win with Jezza, captain coach. Yep. He gets sacked. The next year, Perce takes over. Yeah. He gets sacked. They miss out in the grand final. Then they win 2 in a row. Yep. Realistic, they could have won 4 in a row.
Should have won 4.
3 different coaches.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that time? What happened? Like how crazy was it?
Well, yeah, you're on a high after winning the grand final, and I remember grand final night at the Hilton in East Melbourne. We had the function, and everyone's piling into the function, and Jezza grabs me and said, "Come over, we'll go in the bar and have a drink and talk about the game." Oh, like I thought, Jezza wants to talk to me, you know. I was just in awe of that anyway. But then, you know, we had our AGM down at the Brunswick Town Hall. I'll never forget it. No mobile phones in those days. And I'm sort of down the front handing up all the trophies, you know, and everything like that. And George Harris gets up to make a speech, and halfway through it I sort of felt, God, I think he's going to resign. Anyway, George wanted to cut the committee. He was full-time himself and he wanted to be paid more, and Jezza backed him. So all hell broke loose after that. And I can still remember there was one phone box outside and all the journos sprinting out trying to sort of be the one to break the news first because we had no mobile phones. So it was crazy. And then to fight Jezza and George side of things, they appointed Perce Jones as coach and Fitzy as captain because Perce was very popular amongst the supporters. We had a big meeting at Festival Hall. It was like a presidential American, you know, walking down the aisle. I remember we all caught a bus, all the players and everything down to
After
Festival
a
Hall.
grand final.
Yeah, like I thought only these things happen, but Bunyip, where I grew up, there's always trouble in country footy.
Yeah.
And here you are at the top of the tree, and all the hell's broken loose after a magnificent year.
And you know, to put into context, I know people can put two and two together, but it's like, you know, Chris Fagan retiring after a grand final and Greg Swan leaving at the same time. People come in and take their place. Like, it just is unheard of in the modern game, obviously.
Yeah, well, you know, and as I said, Perce was sort of the, you know, to sort of combat Jezza's popularity and that, but and it was a very interesting year with Perce as coach. He had the Dover Hotel in Carlton, and
is that the one that's still on the corner? Like,
it's still on the corner, but not a hotel now, I don't think. But with Gags Gallagher and those sort of people, and Mark McClure used to work there, so you know there was an odd time that Perce come to training, which perhaps mightn't have been as good a nick as he should be as coach. Yeah. But that's the way it was, and we did. Get to the finals again, but we didn't get to the big one because we also had a few injuries just near the end as well. Val Perovic was injured and that sort of thing, so we're a bit short down back. But and then after that, David Parkin got the chop from Hawthorn, and Carlton were onto the phone to him as quick as they could be.
Oh yeah. Speaking of the '79 grand final as well, like, you know, probably one of the more famous grand finals with the Wayne Harms tap back in. The Jezza broke his ankle with 10 minutes to go in the game.
He sprained his ankle.
Sprained.
Yeah.
Okay, a bit of carry on there from Jezza.
Yeah.
He got taken off the ground, taken down the room. So coach, captain gets taken off.
Yep.
You were on the bench. So are you coaching the last 10 minutes? Are you a premiership coach?
Well, I must admit, I'm proud I actually made a move that day.
Yeah.
Because Jezza got taken straight up the race, and I've thought, well, Kenny Sheldon, just get on the ground, mate. You know, just get out there. And I'm buzzing up to Wes trying to tell him, you know, that Jezza's off, and he finally answered me. I said, Wes, Jezza's gone up the race. What? You know, and I can't say exactly what he said. And I said, look, I hope this is all right. I've just put Bomber on the ground because Jezza's gone up the race. But then as soon as the siren went, I think the adrenaline kicked in, and Alex was out there celebrating with everyone as well.
Yeah, amazing. After they win in '79, 80, as we know, the year didn't go to plan.
Yep.
Percy's coach.
Yep.
He gets into a punch-on with the other coach.
Yeah.
Was that mid-game or?
No, it was quarter time. Quarter time. It all become about because a guy called Rudy Webster. Okay. He was West Indian and famous for, but I don't think he was officially a sports psych, but that was his sort of go.
Yeah.
And he was great mates of Wesloff's and Perce and was involved at Carlton and went across to Richmond. Anyway, and Tony Jules.
So they'd poached him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they were still good mates at Wes and all that sort of the time. But anyway, he's told Tony and the Richmond blokes, look, if you biff the Blues and get into them, they'll fold, you know. Anyway, quarter time, you know, McClure's getting stitches and, you know, blokes are, you know, got black eyes, and it was on for young and old. And Richmond just come out for the thump. And anyway, Purse is coming down at Waverley. I don't know if you remember the old coach's box and coming down, and Purse has, you know, got that stutter, and he's yelling at to Tony Jewell, you so-and-so and so-and-so. I can't say the words. And anyway, I've grabbed Percy. Come on, mate, you've got to, you know, talk to the boys. Anyway, he kept looking over at the Richmond huddle, yelling out to Rudy Webster. Anyway, broke up, and then we're heading off, and Percy started, you know, sending abusive words to Rudy Webster, and then Tony Jewell heard it. And then he's come rushing over and said, you big weak, and just threw this left at him. And I'm jumped in the middle trying to separate him. And, you know, end up everyone going their own way. But the next day, you know, you're probably a bit young, but or are you too young? But you might have heard we used to have World of Sport, and they'd get the two coaches in and Lou would interview. Anyway, they did the interview, and then all of a sudden Rudy Webster appears and puts his arm around the two coaches, said, I can't believe these two blokes fought over me. So, but it was all because of, you know, the biffo and all that. But
did that? Who won the game?
Yeah, Richmond did.
Richmond did.
Yeah.
So they got under the they did get under the skin.
Like the language from both coaches, and you know, it was pretty high. And like, imagine doing that now.
Oh mate,
like
you can't even look at anyone these days.
They'd be suspended for 2 years.
Yeah,
and but you know, they were fine at World of Sport the next day. But yeah, like you got, you know, I think there was, you know, 70-odd thousand people, and the worst thing that I was worried about the most, we had one of our board members, Bruce Combin, he an ex-player, but you know, Bruce was he loved to fight. And all I could think of, I could hear him running in. I'm thinking, if he gets there and we haven't broken this up, it'll get bigger and bigger. So, I was lucky enough to get the two off and get the game going again.
81, 82, like that time, you know, coming back after the year, David Parkin comes in. What changed from your perspective in the club and to go back-to-back? Like,
look, you know, they were the 2 great years of footy. Really, I feel like I learnt so much. I was on the phone to all the David's messages and everything. But I can remember one of the first things we did when we had pre-season, we were running out of Banyule up the hills, and he gave me a fearful serve because we had no water at the end of the runs, because David was really ahead of himself, where I can remember training at Richmond in 78, and one of the players collapsed, and Tony told him he was weak because there was no water and no hydration. So, totally, you know, well-educated sports science, you know, just changed the whole fabric of the way training was, and, you know, the fitness side of things. Got Peter Schockman in. It was just sort of took it to a whole new level. And I can remember we played Richmond up in Bendigo in a practice match, and the Tigers come out looking fantastic and absolutely belted us. And we're walking off the ground, and David's, you know, can get a bit negative and saying, we're going to be no good, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I know you're not going to like this, but we'll beat Richmond in the first game. Well, you big-headed Carlton, that's the trouble with you lot. Anyway, we played the Tigers at Wave in the first game and, you know, bowled them over quite convincingly. And Perce Jones always says if he had Hunter and Bazusto, he would have won in 80. So we were lucky to have those two players come in and top us up nicely as well. But, like David would have match practice every Tuesday night. And, he'd stop and restart things so that you really understood what he wanted. And, it was just a great couple of years. And 82 was tough. We just got there. But, once we got the final, I knew the boys would sort of, grow another leg.
What was the year around, I was speaking to Dad about the other night, so he had glandular fever, had to live 82. With you. Yeah, what was that year around? Because you weren't favourites that year?
No, I think even the last home and away game we sort of had to win it to sort of make sure we're in the four in those days. And people like your dad was crook and all that. And Wesloff said we had Kent Hunter and his wife living with us at the time with their little baby, and he said, "Can you have another boarder?" So Dad come in and he had his own cup and knife and fork and cut everything. So. We sort of helped him through, and there was an odd night. I think he might have disappeared, and just to relieve a bit of tension. But it was an interesting time, and and I think he won the best and fairest, if I remember correctly, that year. Like to be a premiership player and win the best and fairest in a year like that, it's pretty special.
What's the back then as well, and the history of Carlton, I suppose, is the play hard on the field, but play hard off the field as well. What are some of your memories around the players and training and heading to the pub and just the things that they used to get up to back then?
Well, they were good on and off the field. The pleasant Sunday mornings, become sort of pleasant Sunday afternoons. I think the girlfriends and wives probably dreaded Sundays, but
what's that? Did they have the drinks on Sundays? Was it?
Yeah, we'd have training, and David, when David was coach, it was the Proddies and the Catholics, and then we'd go upstairs and watch World of Sport, and they'd all have some food and things like that, and in those days I was there for a while and I have to chuff off and play my own game, but I'd hear all the stories. But Val Perovic, one of the famous ones, had a red panel van and mattress in the back, and he'd park it at the club on Saturday mornings. One of my jobs was to wake him up Sunday morning for training, so to make sure he arrived and come in and joined in. But but you know what? They had this attitude when you went out on the track, bad luck how you felt. You just had to train. I can remember with Jezza, if you missed training, it was 10 laps Wednesday, and if you missed Wednesday as well, it was 20 laps. And I can remember one Jimmy Buckley doing a lot of 20 laps on Thursdays. So, that's the way it was in those days. But, they certainly, when it was time to train and play footy, they certainly, lifted another cog.
Huge. That period obviously is immense, and I suppose you've seen a lot of these guys transition, my old man, other guys out of the game now, and I suppose even more of more of a serious question, the effect I suppose footy's had on a lot of that era now. Could you at the time have probably seen what was to unfold with even just head knocks, CTE? We've spoken to all those things.
Not at the time. I wouldn't have thought. It's part of my job now is with the past players looking after things like that, and in one sense it's really sad in some of the incidents, and it's rewarding in others. But I look at the way the game was played, blokes would just whack anyone for and these days you'd get 12, 18 months for the same things. But I think the AFL certainly on top of things a lot better, and I think we cringe a bit even when you see someone tackle someone and sort of look like they're going to the ground. You sort of, where years ago the harder you threw them the better. But some of the boys that played with Dad and all that, they've not in a good way, and certainly because of the head knocks. I always remember when we played Collingwood, Billy Pickett and Mark McClure. I'd never watched the centre bounce. I'd turn to centre forward to see who was going to clock who first, and then they were the first two to sit down and have a drink in the aftermatch. So I'm sure a lot of those things has to affect players over the journey. And as I say, I think different game altogether now.
What are some of the not to make light, but when you look back on some of the biggest moments, I suppose, on the physical side that you've seen over your time back in, the 80s? I think Magro ironed out Jezza one day at Carlton was pretty big. I think nearly every week there was something. Not in all games. It was back to Carl Dittridge and those guys, the old round arm would just be copped all the time, and
Big Nick and all that in the ruck, they'd go up and they'd throw the elbows back. So it was, it was just sort of, part of the game, which is, a shame to say, but, we've moved on from those sort of days anyway.
Bloody oath. So you're at Carlton. When did the decision to move across to the Bulldogs come about? How did that sort of transition come?
I was involved with the under 18. We called it the Teal Cup in those days.
Yep.
And it got Dr. Tony Capes was president of Footscray.
Yep.
And he and I become quite friends over that time. We had Ray Jordan, Slug Jordan as coach, who was an interesting character. And what happened when I first started in footy in 79, I went to Tassie to watch the Teal Cup, and Victoria got absolutely beaten. And those days, all the clubs had a promotions officer, and Alan Swab used to have a monthly meeting, and he'd chair it. And anyway, we all started complaining, why isn't Victoria winning? Because it was more kids from amateurs and all that were picked, not under 19s and things like that. So Swabby appointed Ray Jordan coach. I was a selector and a manager and a few other people, and we changed the whole system, and it got that strong that that's when they cut it from just a Victorian team to Metro and country to sort of make it a bit more even. But, so I got a good friendship with Tony, and, working at Carlton, like you knock on the door to try to recruit or whatever, and that was, where do you want to sign? Yeah. So sometimes you've got to challenge yourself and see if it's you or if it's just the footy club. So I bit the bullet and decided to go to Footscray, and I think I was there a week, and I must admit I cried my eyes out thinking, what in the hell have I done here? I've left the premiership team. I've got Calvin Templeton, wanted to go to Melbourne. Mocha Dunson, the best and fairest, going to North Melbourne. We couldn't find Doug Hawkins because Sheeds was trying to get him. So it was just...
So Sheeds was trying to get him to Essendon?
Essendon, yeah. So it was just, I thought, what in the hell? And, just a hole in, major sponsors, everything wasn't what I was used to. But anyway, put my head down and thought we'd just got to employ good people and... try to, I suppose we were a bit of the early ones to start the money ball and get players from other clubs and that could help us.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you're mentioning it, like just that actually had the vision of money ball in my head, like playing that game. So who'd you bring in, and then how did the Mick Malthouse coming into coach come about? And obviously you knew him from back in the Tigers days, but could you foresee him being at that time one of the game's record holder of coaching?
I had confidence he'd be a good coach, but not thinking that you're going to be the number one man that ever coached. But first year 83, or just at the start, like I was so used to David's professionalism and all that. And believe it or not, Footscray's facilities weren't actually too bad. We had a good gym and change locker area. All that was pretty good, to be honest. And Ian Hampshire was the coach, terrific fellow, like hard-working plumber, and we had all these facilities, but we weren't sort of using them. And I thought, look, I just don't think he's going to be the guy to carry the club anywhere. So with Wayne Walsh and myself, who was chairman of selectors, and mainly myself, just being a bit naive and young in that role to replace a coach with another one at the time, I just didn't do it the right way. And,
yeah, right. So you had to have the conversation with him?
Yeah, well, and I told the board and all that, but they weren't happy. They wanted to keep Bluey.
Yeah, wow.
And so we sort of cleared things up and we move on with 83. And I can remember the last game of the year we're down at Moorabbin, and we got up and won, and we probably shouldn't have at the end, but we got up and it was a great win. And I thought, oh gosh, things aren't going to change again next year. Anyway, Bluey ended up, and before that I'd been secretly meeting with Mick and all that. Like he worked just in the city. And
what was he doing at the time?
It was a government job in the. I just forget what branch of the government, but I can remember the old filing cabinet, big filing cabinet, slide open. Well, we used to get behind so no one could see us. But I can remember then Bluey decided to resign, And I actually went down to Geelong just to make sure that that's what he wanted to do. Anyway, it was. And I can remember then speaking to Mick sometime later. He was down at Cape Patterson, I think it was, down the beach, and the transistor radio on the beach, and he heard that Bluey had resigned. And he said to Nanette and the kids, let's pack up, we might get a phone call. So that's sort of where the Malthouse sort of, dynasty started, really. And, to me, I don't think Mick gets enough credit for such a great job he did, and he was such a strong leader straight away. Like I remember Jimmy Edmund was captain and he was going through the horrors, and Mick said, look, we have to drop him. And I said, do you want me to be with you, sort of thing? He said, no, I'll be fine. Well, you could nearly hear the Wittenstand roof go off when Jimmy got told the news, but 2 weeks later he was back and playing great footy. So he had the courage from day one and he never coached before, like he never coached in any way really. So he was fantastic and strong.
I don't know if you remember this, but when Mick got appointed at Carlton, I remember it was obviously in the off season, must have been over a Christmas break or whenever it was. And I remember I was at the club at the time. And I remember you walked up to me and you said, I'm not sure if you're going to like this, but Mick Malthouse is a coach and Rob Wiley is the assistant. Yep. And I was like, well, I don't really know who Rob Wiley is, but that's that's fantastic. Why is this no good? And you told me that Dad had broke Mick Malthouse's jaw, and apparently Dad still says allegedly kicked Rob Wiley in the face or something.
Well, I think there was I think Mick might have landed one on Dad and Dad's landed one back. So there was,
Oh, well, that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, as we said, that's what went on in those days.
Yeah.
And, I don't think Rob Wiley would have done much, but Dad wasn't afraid of letting a few things go. But, I was probably, I suppose just, warning you, you go home and Dad's giving you a mouthful sort of thing. But, I think those things were, as I said, in those days, at the end of the day, everyone would go to after matches and sit down and have a beer.
No, they were – I actually probably look back now. I loved all my coaches. I took something from all of them. But the one thing I did love about Mick the most was it wasn't – I think these days we put a lot of stress on like a relationship coach and having to sit down with players and talk to them about stuff, which is fantastic. I do appreciate that. But also what Mick was really good at was you just knew where you sat with him, and if he told you to do something, you just did that, and you were sweet. Yeah. And that was all you needed to do, just do your role.
Yeah. I don't know if it was just me, but I thought he really did like you playing. Like he played you when he could and gave you a chance down back, and
I loved it.
And I think you just end up having injuries and things which wasn't fair on your body, but I sort of feel that Mick, whatever happened,
he gave me the biggest chance.
Whatever happened,
maybe he felt bad for bashing my dad. Maybe that story was Dad was putting a bit of mayo on it.
Yeah. But no, it would have happened. It would have happened. But I think Mick's got quite a few skeletons that he's let fly in the old days, and probably lucky he wasn't reported a few more times.
No, they were good blokes, Mick and Rob.
But as I say, I sort of always felt that he was always keen to play if you were up and about.
Yeah, he was great. Just let him know what role it was, go get it done, and if you did it, you did it. And I think he's a great coach.
I find these days, the old coaches wouldn't survive these days. Like you can't, sort of berate somebody in front of everyone.
Do you not see that happening these days at all? Like there's no...
I think, like sometimes I go into the room after the game and think, geez, Vossy must have to bite his tongue. But, he's so calm and, he's...
Which I don't understand that. Because I think sometimes you do need a rev.
I think sometimes it doesn't hurt, but it was probably a bit over the top in the old days. Yeah. But, I think we've got to have good resilience and accept what's going on. But, I don't think Mick and Parko and Pagan and Alan, all these, Kennedy and Barras, gosh, they'd be horrified that...
there's definitely a happy medium in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely.
The tough conversation stuff, I suppose, is something that, when we were working together, sounds weird to say, but when we were, at the footy club, it's inevitable. You have to have those conversations with players, and ultimately, like, that's the better the club is, the easier they are to have. How did you go with when you're in those roles of list management and recruitment, all those things, like having to sack players, delisting players, coaches, all those things? Like, was it something that does any memory stand out to you of like those times?
Oh, you look back and they're the worst times. Like this time of the year is just a disaster. And
shocking.
If I can just go back to one of Mick's, we're playing out at Waverley against Carlton, and Brad Hardy didn't chase Wayne Blackwell down the ground. And I'm in the coach's box and not trying to be a smarty, but you get a bit of a gut feel. You know, Mick said, that's so-and-so, he's coming off, and I said, geez, Mick, I don't know, bugger him. And then, Brad comes off and waves the jumper. Well, boy, that's one of the toughest half times I've ever been involved in, just to get everything calm and quiet sort of thing. But
so the player was waving his own jumper.
Brad come off and waved his jumper up at the box,
saying I'm done.
Well,
or
go to what sort of thing. So it was pretty tense at half time in the rooms, and but the sad thing is I think the world of Brad as a player and all that, but it wasn't the right thing to do, and I've always felt Mick really helped Brad win a Brownlow, really, because Whitten Oval was very narrow, and Brad sort of, Mick was ahead of his time, but had the loose defender, and Brad was just a champion. He could read the play and use the ball well, and it was why in 1985 we nearly got to a grand final. So it was sort of sad to sort of see that.
Is that how it ended after
pretty
that?
Well,
yeah,
pretty well. And then I went to Brisbane, and Brad because Footscray weren't going to tolerate having him sort of around, or Mick didn't want him as well. So, but at the end of the year when you ring someone to come and see you, they sort of half know what's going on. So it's always a tough time. Have to tell people it's the end of the road, and you got to move on. I remember one player, we up in Brisbane, we told him, and he said, "No, I'm not going." And he had a surname like yours, actually. And Mark Buckley, I don't think he'd be upset if I told the story.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he said, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going. This is at Brisbane." And I said, "Mate, sorry, but you are, Anyway, he finally left, and Des and Nerily English were up at the time, and I planned to go and see them that night. So I'm sitting in their holiday apartment, and next minute Mark Buckley walks in. So I had to get up and go again, because I thought it might be a bit awkward if I'm still in the room.
Oh, you're going for dinner and you just roll on.
So I've sort of copped him twice, so I thought I'll go this time, not him. But it's always. And Brisbane was probably the hardest in a way, because you drag so many people up there, and you haven't got the footy like you have in Melbourne to drop back to properly at the time. So that was a real difficult situation up there for sure.
So that was when obviously Fitzroy folded, and the Bears started up in Brisbane.
The Bears were still going before Fitzroy folded.
What?
Yeah, 87 was our first year.
Really? So the Bears were there whilst Fitzroy was there?
Yeah.
And then
in Melbourne, Fitzroy was still here in Melbourne at the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it wasn't till around 90. My dates, the years are pretty hopeless, but in the early 90s.
So that wasn't actually it was more of a merger.
Well, later on it was, but
Yeah.
so my job was to get a whole brand new coaches.
So what, like a Giants setup, like Giants and Sons get a whole
had to start
thing.
from scratch. We didn't have, when I got the job, we didn't have one player on the book, so you're running around trying to get players to come up. And
who was your, give us your, on the top of the list, who you went to straight away to start the club? Who did you get, and then who did you maybe miss out on that you nearly got?
Yeah, well, we got Mark Williams, was nearly first to sign.
Choco. We had him on the pod recently. Very good.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's great at all these things. Yeah. And he's good fun.
I had to buy 7 MCGs off him.
I know he's always coming up with some things. Jeff Rains. I must admit, Kevin Sheedy again, come to the party. Clubs had to give us 3 players, and Carlton gave us Michael Aitken, who was left.
Ian Aiken?
No, Michael.
Is
He's
that
a
related to?
Western Australian. He's a doctor. Went to England to do medicine. I think Peter's Satori. I think it's Peter. He gone to England. Like all the Carlton blokes
Just left.
Yeah, like they weren't. Colo gave us ones that he knew weren't coming.
Yeah.
Colo, he was good at it. But Sheeds,
So they just picked. They just said you can have these three.
Yeah, these three. All the clubs had to give us. And anyway, at the end of the day, the only ones that were players that we got, like in lots of ways from that three, with Essendon, we got Jeff Rains and Mike Richardson and Chris Waterson, because I think their salary cap at the time was tight, so we helped them out a bit too. But Kevin also come up and played practice matches and things like that where no one else would do it at the start. So, and got Peter Knights as coach. So, it was, like we trained in temporary facilities and, down at Carrara in portable huts, and you'd do a warm-up and the boys nearly go through the floor and things like that. So it was a tough time, but when I look back, it was a great experience.
So when Fitzroy and the Bears merged, is that when it turned into the Lions?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll sort of, there's still like the Roger Merritt's involved, sort of as a best and fairest awards and things like that.
I had no idea. I thought that it was straight away they'd done and then went to the Bears.
No. And like, there was one stage it looked like, North Melbourne would sort of, merge or get some of the players, but it ended up being Fitzroy and that sort of thing. So, it was a hectic time.
Some young guys as well at the Bears. I'm not sure how these came, but obviously, you're working with Vossy now.
Yep.
You met him as a 16-year-old playing at the Bears. Was Nathan Buckley there as well? Or was that a bit later on?
No. I wasn't there when Nathan arrived, but I was a part of. We were allowed to put Northern Territory boys on.
As like a supplementary pick.
They gave us that area where Nathan was where he come from, even though he was playing in Adelaide. But we were allowed to put 3 Queensland boys on, and Vossy was one of them. And I can remember one day at training when he was only 16, with standing beside Robert on the boundary, and they were sort of doing a bit of match sim, and the ball got kicked, and he's running with the flight of the ball, and everyone's coming at him, and he's got absolutely bowled over, jumped straight up, and had his kick, and Robert said, "I think he might be all right, this bloke." So he showed his toughness. Yeah.
How did you So back, this is prior to the draft, and all the AFL sort of setting this up. But how did you go and recruit players? Was it just word of mouth, or you had to actually just go out and go for a drive and go and watch teams play? How did it work?
Well, I suppose being at Carlton and Footscray, I sort of even
zones.
In those days, Carlton, and we had zones and Footscrays, but with the Bears, I suppose my history of at the 2 other clubs, I did a lot of recruiting as well. Even though I was the boss at Footscray, I still loved. That was what I loved the most. Going to ask someone for money was tough going for me, but going to recruit. So you had people, like you knew so many people around Australia, so you knew who was, worth chasing and not sort of thing. So, it was just hard because, we had, no, there was no story, so it was all going to be brand new. And I can remember January in 87, we all, I think it was something like about 50, 60 of us jumped on a plane that landed in Brisbane, and we stayed at a hotel, and gradually one after another got a house, and that was a party that Friday night and things like that. So it was interesting times.
What do you there's so much, I suppose, talk about now with Western Sydney and Gold Coast as well. If you could have done it, if you did it then on that sort of budget and it's grown into something, you must think over time the other ones will find their way. Do you believe that Giants and Gold Coast can have that history?
Oh, no doubt. And I mean, look, the AFL doing it better. When the Bears come in and West Coast Eagles had a state of origin team pretty well. Where we were getting Carlton's leftovers sort of so we're now it's so much better. The concessions and everything that they get, but also with the Bears, because I was involved, but it was a tough going in lots of ways because not only we paid a fee to join the league, if a player was say you were contracted to Carlton and Carlton were happy you to come and play at the Bears, I'd do a deal with Colo and let's say 50 grand transfer fee. Well, then the VFL put another fee on top of that. So we're getting sort of dudded every way along the line, really. So
did the AFL not own the Bears, or how did that work?
That was a private ownership.
Private ownership.
Yeah. So Paul Cronin and Christopher Skase. Paul Cronin originally got the license, and the people that he had finance all fell over. Yeah. So then he went to Christopher Skase, and Skase got involved, and it was quite sad in a way because when you had Christopher Skase's time, he was fantastic. Really, unfortunately tried to conquer the world, but when you had his time, he was, knew all the players and loved footy. And
who was Christopher Skase? I can see someone that's well known.
Yeah, Christopher Skase, Mirage, the Port Douglas, Mirage, and Gold Coast, and all that.
So he was a developer of all that stuff.
And Quintex was the company. Yep. His company actually had the TV rights one year. Got it back to 7 and things like that. So he was a big deal in the times, but. And we had, Andrew Jarman and a few boys signed up, and Andrew Jarman was prepared to come and just needed a guarantee from Christopher Skase, and Skase's company went belly up 2 days later. So a lot of things went against us, but, our first 3 years we won 6, 7 and 8 games. So, it's not bad from a team of, from all over.
And what was he coaching?
Peter Knights at the start.
Yeah.
So then Peter Knights got sacked, and a guy.
How many years did he have?
He had the first 3 and a bit years. Like there was one, I think the 4th year we got called to Skase's office and we had to sack 5 players because we lost 5 games in a row. And I said, but what if we don't win a game? We won't have a team.
So he wanted to sack 5 players because you'd lost 5 games.
5 games in a row, yeah.
Did you have to do it?
It was Paul Cronin who was chairman, was the main one behind it.
Yeah.
And Knightsy and I rang Christopher later, and he said, look, just get rid of blokes that you definitely don't, Yeah. So, we had to make some hard decisions on some of those guys, but, it was just no common sense. It was some weird times. We were living in Brisbane, playing at Carrara, and then we got told we all had to move down to the Gold Coast. So there was a lot of things happening.
It's it's just so fascinating to know that the private ownership stuff as well, because obviously now the AFL owns all the teams. And I'm assuming when Fitzroy and Bears came together, did the AFL take over?
Yeah, went back to committee and
So how did you end up back at Carlton?
Well,
was that on your own terms?
No, no. As I said,
so even you get sacked too.
Oh yeah, she said to me, "You'll get the sack at some stage." But I thought I was travelling all right.
Yeah. No, we all do, mate. Yeah.
And I can remember I've been there 6 years, and Matthew Campbell, who played with the Bears and used to do a bit of footy commentating, we both sort of said, "Look, we'll be the first life members at this club," And a few weeks later, we're both gone. But I can remember brother Gary rang me, and he was in footy at Footscray, and said, gee, the word is you're in trouble. I said, oh, okay, And then when Mick Sheehan rang me straight after that.
The reporter?
Said, gee, Sonny, I think you're in trouble. And I thought, well, I am in trouble. If Mick Sheehan, Michael Sheehan sort of says it, you're in trouble. So who has been quite a good friend over the journey, really. So I can remember going around to Andrew Ireland's place later on and say, look, am I in trouble? He said, no, everything's fine. Anyway, my mum was up at the time. I'll never forget it. I come back in the house and said, no, I think everything's fine. Anyway, Andrew, I rang the president. We had a sort of a committee, and a guy called Noel Gordon. I rang him in Sydney. I said, am I in trouble? He said, yeah, your stuff, mate. So then Andrew come around and said, look, I couldn't tell you, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But it's the weirdest sacking of all time because I ended up staying for a month. And I said to Andrew, I think I better go. So it was, if you can be let go, it was sort of it wasn't marched out like I've seen a lot of people. So, but at the time I had 3 little kids and Lillian, Scarlett and Tom, and I'm thinking, gosh, what are Carol and I going to do? So, but in hindsight, it was the best thing getting back to Melbourne, and lucky enough to eventually get back to the Blues.
Who was around at the Blues at that time, like coaching and administration roles?
Well, it was.
And what year? Sorry.
Yeah, so I got back in Carlton in '94.
Yep.
I did a bit of work for North Melbourne in '93 and coached Oakley in the VFA, which was a good experience, and worked for a mate of mine, Phil Rolls, in the plastic game, bags game, and all that, and. He's
plastic bag game.
Yeah, he's gone on.
Lucky you didn't invest in that game, mate. That would.
Well, he's absolutely killing it now, and all the.
He's doing the paper bags now.
Yeah, that's right, and amazing business he's got. But unfortunately, Alan Swab passed away, and Colo went to his role at the AFL, and Goffey went from footy to CEO at Carlton. And Jeff Walsh went from recruiting to footy manager. So there was a vacancy there, and I applied for it, and originally I didn't get it. And I think Cole and that thought I might want to, had bigger ideas and all that, which I didn't. I'd had enough. I just really loved recruiting. That's all I wanted to do. And anyway, Goffey ended up ringing me and said, look, I'm not happy who they're looking at, you're going to get the job, but look, I can only offer you this amount. And because I must admit, at Brisbane, I was financially the best money I was ever on, but it was also interest rates were about 17%, so it was tough times, even though you're on good money. And I said, look, I just want to work at Carlton and, be happy sort of thing. So, and Parko was the coach, and it worked out like, ended up a great relationship with Cole and Jeff Walsh, and Cole, still speak to Cole. It's sad that he's not in footy and not really in the best of health. And I see Walshy, there's a few of us walk every Thursday and things like that. So, but I used to say to Parko, I was, good luck charm, because we won in 95 and 81, 82 and 95. So I said, while you're there, I might still have a job. But, so I've been lucky to be back all that since 94.
Crazy. So, I was born in 93.
Yeah.
So you've been there for 31 years.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I told you I knew years from day
one.
I
know. This might be going back to then go forward again, but the conversation around, so with the recruiting stuff, I know that's what you've always been sort of loved doing. The conversation, was it with Wes Loft saying, I need a Royce Hart?
Yeah.
That was before, because then you come back and then this player would have been playing.
Yeah, when in my 80s with Wes, famous story, and I lived off it for a while, that he said, you got to find me a Royce Hart. Yeah. And I can remember going over to Perth to watch the under-16s in South Australia playing, and there was this young bloke, skinny bloke called Stephen Kernan, and I come back and I said to Wes, I found the Royce Hart that you want. And he said, no way, I said, mate, he's going to be a star, this bloke. And I said, the only trouble is his father's the general manager of Glenelg, and, they hate Victorians. So we started working on sticks, from day one. And I can remember getting Bruce Dool to ring him, and you can imagine Bruce is not the greatest talker, but Harry Kernan used to say Stephen would say, oh, g'day, Bruce, and then be a pause. Hi, Stephen. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think it was, around 82, Stephen and Harry said, Harry said, look, we'll come over with his mother and myself and Stephen. And in those days, if you brought a player from interstate, you might pay for everything, but they'd go and talk to everyone. Yeah. Like we went on a footy trip, I think 81 or whatever it was, and Bruce Abernathy come on our footy trip overseas, landed back, signed with North Melbourne. And we put him with Jeff Southby and everything. He didn't do a good job, Jeff. Yeah. But so Harry, being in footy, he said, well, we'll pay our own way over, and whoever wins Stephen's signature can reimburse us. It can't be much fairer than that. And so the main competitions were Melbourne and Essendon and ourselves, and Sheeds ended up being our toughest opponent. He used to go and sit in the foyer in his stockbroking office in Adelaide, just trying to get to him as well. But, we've done a lot of work, with Stephen and the family. And, he ended up signing but wouldn't come until they, won a flag and things like that. And then I'd left. So, but I was rapt to, when I come back to sort of be around with him when they won in 95 to, see him sort of finish his career. But as I said, my wife thinks I've lived off sticks all my life.
The recruiting, like those sort of, it's just hard to imagine that happening now, having to be that, into players, putting out that much work in, the equalisation of the competition is very different with the draft picks and whatnot, obviously. But what stands out to you as well around that period of recruiting stories that you're, I suppose, really proud of the guys that you were able to get into the club and maybe some that you just missed out on? Yeah.
Well, I mean, in those days you could move people around a bit. If mum and dad weren't together, you might change the address. The address. Like Greg Miller was a master at it, at it. So you all had to be in on it a bit. And also in those days, like I said, you only had two Form 4s, so you had interstate. You had to be really careful. And
so Form 4, that means interstate players were Form 4.
I think it was you could be on that for 3 years. I think, if my memory is correct. And then after that, you went back into the system. So sometimes clubs sold their form to another club so that they could get another player. Because some clubs in those days, the money was, really important. Like if I can just go back a little bit with Footscray, when I was there, Gary Shaw was playing for Claremont in Western Australia and Collingwood were chasing him. And we had the first sort of pick at that time, but we wanted a young guy called Andrew Purser, a big ruckman. Anyway, Collingwood rang me and said, look, we're prepared to pay you some money not to pick Gary Shaw. And I said, well, what are you offering? And they said, 80,000. I said, look, I don't think that's enough, but I'll speak to the president. I rang Tony Capes and said, Collingwood want to pay us not to pick someone, and they've offered 80. I said, I reckon we'll get more than that. So went back to, I think we ended up getting 130 grand not to pick him. Then they had to go to St Kilda, and they only got 50 grand. And when they found out what we got, they weren't too happy. So,
and you were never going to pick him.
Never going to pick him. Yeah. And but we wanted Andrew Purser, who we got, and he was a great player. But yeah. So going back, it was you had to pit yourself up against Noel Judkins and Greg Millers and all these guys, and you had to really sort of you end up sort of like becoming great friends. With the families and all that. I mean, that still happens a bit, but in those days, you had to work on them for a fair while. So, Kenny Hunter was one that we got, from Western Australia, and Peter Bazusto. And when I was at Footscray, Brad Hardy, we had to do a lot of hard work because, everyone was after him. And Tony McGuinness was another one that was on Geelong's form and it dropped off, and so then everyone was at him. So you sort of had to be up for the challenge to beat all these other great recruiters and clubs to those sort of players.
If you're happy to, which I'm not giving you much choice because you're on the pod, but I'd love to talk about the so Carlton when you lost the draft picks.
Yep.
So the salary cap breach was it early 2000?
Yep.
2000.
Yep.
So was it? How many picks did you lose? What's your sort of memories of that happening? How did it all sort of come about?
Well, I think the worst thing was that there was an amnesty, if that's the right word, for the clubs to come clean. And I don't think we obviously didn't come clean or do it properly. And do you know if any other clubs came clean and then didn't get punished? I think, look, I can't remember exactly, but
because everyone would have been doing it.
Everyone was doing it, up to their neck in it, But, I think because Jack Elliott was always rubbing the VFL, AFL up the wrong way. Yeah. So that didn't help, and we're bigger than the AFL, and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, like it was. We had that particular year Daniel Wells and Brendan Goddard lined up, and young Daniel was going to live with us at home, and Brendan's family were mad Carlton, and my wife used to think I'd drop anything if Brendan rang. He was crook or something. So it was a real, like I said, friend. You build up because that's who you're going to get, and you wanted to make them feel comfortable. And then it all hell broke loose that we'll end up losing our picks. So it was tough times ringing up those two boys saying, look, we're not going to get you. We've sort of breached the salary cap and things like that. So
do you remember finding out about it?
I was the draft was on a Sunday, and I think the Friday night I got a phone call from Ian Coots, I think, to say that we failed to convince them and change the AFL's mind. And I know Colo was present, I think, at the time, and he was furious. He thought that they'd be a bit lenient. So, we lost our priority pick and our first pick, and also our first pick the year after, but we were allowed to have a priority pick when we picked up Andrew Walker. Or sorry, we lost the priority pick, but we could have the first pick and we got Walks. But
what would that priority pick have been, do you know?
The
one that you lost the year after.
The year after? We would have probably had a crack at Adam Cooney because Footscray ended up getting him.
Yeah.
So, and he was a Carlton supporter at the time.
Yeah. So you would have got Walks and Cooney.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So
and Goddard and Wells.
We at the years before, yeah. But and you wouldn't believe it. We played North that next year after we missed the two boys. We're playing North Melbourne at the G. Daniel Wells kicks the winning goal against us. Lance Whitnell said, he just keeps hurting us, this bloke. So, but as it turns out, I can remember we had a meeting on the Saturday morning, and I had to present to the Swan Mackay and some of the board, who we might get. And in those days, I used to sort of round by round put players to judge how I was against other clubs. And anyway, I can remember at pick 45 or something, or for whatever it was, they said, oh, you'll pick, Billy Bloggs. And I said, well, not necessarily, because someone always falls through the cracks. And that's, when we got Simo, we rated Simo in the top 25. And, at the end of the day, like I know we lost Goddard and Wells, but I'm not unhappy with, getting Simo. He's just, over 300 games and just got better and better, as time went on. So, one disappointment, but you have a win as well. So, it was tough times, and it sort of financially we got fined $1 million, and it's taken us so long to recover in lots of ways.
Who, if you look back now in your recruiting sort of history, who are you most happy with the picks that you were able to get, whether they were high picks and they really proved themselves, or they were picks that were like rookie picks that you just think far out, didn't expect it from these?
Aaron Hamill, pick 79 at the Blues, pretty happy with that. The only thing is, I'll clarify, I missed Mickey O'Loughlin in that draft. I thought I'd be able to get him in round 3.
And he went early?
He went in round 2. So if I had done what I gut feeling, because I really rated him and loved him, and he barracked for Carlton, he gives it to me every time he sees me now. Public in front of big events. But so we could have got Camperelli, Mickey O'Loughlin and Aaron. I might have been able to put the feet up for a while after that.
That would have been a good
Aaron, Brett Thornton as a rookie, ended up being a terrific player. He tough time to come when he did, and he had to play on the monsters all the time. Where, say, a great player like Michael Sexton was playing on the third player at third forward, where and helped him, and then as he grew confidence in games, he ended up playing on the better players. But poor old Brett, he had to play on the superstars straight away. So there was one player that I always felt, that never got to his potential, and it was mainly through injuries, a young fella called Murray Vance. Okay. We played a game out at Waverley, and we were playing Fremantle in the early days, and Parko said he's going to be in the team the next first game. And Clive Waterhouse gave him the best elbow I've ever seen and smashed his face. And unfortunately, was never quite the same player, just lost total confidence and all that. So, yeah, there's a few things like that you get sort of sad from that, injuries or something happens that sort of, stop their careers.
What about getting Eddie Betts? So did you recruit Eddie?
Well,
part of the team.
Wayne Hughes was was recruiting at the time, but Dennis and I, everyone loved him, and we were lucky enough to get him. And
he was pretty low pick. It
was a pre-season pick, yeah. But Dennis was real big on Eddie. I can remember watching him in the finals the year before the draft, and God, he was how he wasn't picked, I'll never know really, to be honest. I'll never forget he and Eddie won't mind me talking about it. He went home to Perth one trip, and anyway, he was about a week late getting back, and Dennis said, bring him into my office, and what have you been up to, son? Dennis was quite chirpy in lots of ways, and he said, just enjoyed the family. And did you have a few beers? He said, I might have had quite a few. But he was, he just become a great player. And, I'm really proud of the club for the support and everything they gave him, in some tough times. And, I love seeing what he's done and achieved, and, beautiful family with Anna and all that, and the things they do for so many Indigenous people now, crazy. Like Melbourne Storm, and, he's got kids coming down from the Northern Territory. So it reminds me of my place. We always had players live at our place all the way through as well. So, couldn't be more proud of Eddie than the way everything's turned out, and just one of the great players, one of the great small forwards of all time. No,
he's an absolute star, and you're right. Like what he's doing now, and what the family's doing now with his foundation and everything's been incredible. And for me, even just as like a young bloke watching the way with Jeffy and Yaz, like the three boys, like he would support them, and I still think to this day. It was amazing playing with, all the great players we had at the club, but like Juddy, etc. But the way those three players were the three most exciting players I reckon I've ever played with.
Oh, Chris Sharon, it's just a treasure. He's pretty probably, special. He's better than any of them, to be honest. He was like I sort of. I'm not saying he exactly like Pendlebury, but he had that. Time and everything was like you were going slow motion, but you couldn't get him.
But he was sprinting. Yeah, he was sprinting, but he looked like he was walking.
Like I remember one game we played at Subiaco. I think it was West Coast, and we beat them. But
is that when he kept running into the open goals?
Yeah, Jeffy and Chris,
Dennis,
and Eddie, and Dennis. Who was trying to win the race?
Yeah,
they were all sprinting forward. But and probably Eddie's probably the slowest of the lot, but so smart.
He could turn on a dime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who else in terms of players? Like I know this is a tough one. If you had to pick your spine, okay, so I'm going 2 forwards, 2 mids, 2 backs over your whole career in football, who would you be picking?
Oh, geez, so I'll start down back probably, and Kenny Hunter and Bruce are pretty hard, but then Stephen Silvani, there's a few. Jeff Southby. Middle.
So you're on with Kenny. I'm going to be clear on this. Kenny and Bruce. So they're 2 halfbacks.
Yeah, but Bruce played tall and Kenny, could do the whole lot as well. Mids, Vossi would be, I mean, Carlton, your dad was, so many, like it's a shame in some ways that era of Buckley, Marcoux, Harms, Sheldon were just phenomenal, but they should have played 250 games, but they didn't. Perhaps the lifestyle, the lifestyle might now
definitely caught up.
I think if they were now, they'd be nearly 300. So Vossi and one player, and he didn't always play in the middle, of course, but Doug Hawkins, one of the most special players I've ever seen. Like you could put a circle of 10 people and he'd get out of it somehow. Like he was just special.
It's interesting with how hard it is, I suppose, unless you're living in the era and you're watching football. Because I know how good Doug Hawkins was. I didn't get to watch him play, but it is interesting with premierships how that does help get remembered, I suppose, a little bit more, because there's probably a million other players that are great that didn't get the success. So it does hurt them a little bit in the future with the rankings.
Well, I mean, people talk about Bontempelli, and he's, don't get me wrong, great player, but, I'd still take Hawkins.
Really? Over Bont?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
100 mile an hour. Like Bont changes games, don't get me wrong, but Doug was just unbelievable, just one of the most special players I've ever sort of seen in lots of ways. So, but it's I mean, there's so many great players. Yeah. I feel bad you're leaving people
you can
out.
You can give some special mentions, but we're going to go the two.
But up forward, Sticks, of course.
Yeah.
And bit of an outsider, this one, Simon Beasley for Footscray. He was a pretty special, he was a real genuine full forward.
Yeah.
And just a quick story, when Mick Malthouse coached, Simon was a great lead and great kick, but when the ball hit the deck, it wasn't the best. So when it poured rain, Mick left him out.
Really?
Left him out. So Simon used to put his head out every Saturday morning and see what the weather was like to see if he was playing. But he was pretty special player as well. But you got Juddy and there's so many good players and of all different eras. And you got now you see Cripper every week and Wiedering down back. There's it's hard to pick. Young Dacos, I think Nick will be one of the great players. Down the track.
Yeah, it's very the recency bias is a big one. Do you think like working in footy as well, like looking at players like even opposition players, I suppose in 2000s, early 2000s era, like Judd, Ablett, you say Dane Swan, in that ilk, like who would you rate best out of those three?
I'd probably it's a hard one, but I'd probably go for Juddy because I just think his pace was just electrifying, and it's a shame that we couldn't have been a bit better. But you saw games where he nearly sort of turned the whole thing, like when we played a final up in Sydney, he nearly won it for us. And also, I mean, the other two boys, Gary Ablett Jr. star, like his dad was unbelievable player as well, and Swan and that. But Juddy, was pretty special, and because you know him a bit too, like you talk about humble guy, like I can't ever remember him knocking a signature back or, even to this day, he'd do anything for you if he's got the time, and it's never changed him at all. A bit like Big Sticks, but they're all the same as they were as young fellas.
He's a great man. The question I had was around that time with Juddy. So obviously, Juddy comes over from West Coast. The move to get him back to Carlton. You got to give up Josh Kennedy, who obviously is a great player himself. What do you remember about that time at the club? Because I suppose it's probably the closest to, I wouldn't say closest, because obviously the last few years, like going up to Brisbane in the prelims, nearly playing some good footy too. But I suppose that time with Ratten heading in around that like 2010, 11, 12, I suppose. What do you remember about that time and then the decision to get rid of Ratten, Mick coming in, and then I suppose the tumultuous years through there? Do you reckon on reflection it was the right call or?
It's always sort of hard. Carlton have just got this bad thing of sacking coaches, and I think finally, for once in their life, that they've kept the coach, and I think all the coaches that have been sacked, I think if they were given a bit more support and a bit more talent at different stages, they were all damn good coaches. Rats, I think he's got better and better. It's just been unlucky in a few, other clubs that he's been to. But, you just sort of see the work he does at Hawthorn and things like that. So, but I think when Juddy come and we let Josh go, it was, Juddy was sort of become like the flagship of the club. Like we needed some big identity to sort of get us through a little bit. And, he certainly sort of supplied that for the club. But and look, Josh went home to WA, and it took him a few years before he really got rolling. And certainly at the end, he was, an unbelievable player, and still comes to a couple of Carlton. He and Luke Livingston are great mates, and comes to a few Carlton functions when he's in Melbourne. So that's good. But like I as I said, I really feel for Rats and Mick and Dennis, all the coaches. In that era, I don't know if we had enough support board wise or, list wise, all that sort of. So it was a combination, but they're all, did great jobs for what they had.
What's memories of then? Mick coming back in. I suppose I remember how big it was at the time, but it was also probably a bit of a low point for the club in performances as well. And I can remember still to this day, sometimes you're walking in and no one wants to. Put their head up at all after some of the performances. How hard has it been for you you've had this your whole life, working in footy, good times, bad times. How heavy can it get, like when you're walking into the club sometimes and, especially in administrative roles too? Like one thing I didn't appreciate enough, I think as a player, you're always just thinking about yourself and how you can get in there. But you don't realise that that's what coaches and administration are doing too. Like they need to survive. Everyone's trying to just get by.
Yeah.
So it's hard to. The good clubs do just stick together.
Yeah. Look, I've always been a pretty positive person. I sort of I've always walked in feeling like we're going to win the next week. I remember getting into trouble at the Bears. Ruben Pellerman said, "You said we're going to win." Well, I said, if I told you we're going to lose, I don't think that's very good coming from someone running the club. So hopefully I've always tried to sort of be positive around everyone. But you're right. Like I'm not stupid. Like even at the moment, there's things happened, or poor old Vossy was under the pump. Well, you could feel it, So you're trying to sort of keep the place a bit bouncy and all that sort of thing, and try to sort of say, look, let's concentrate on the next game and things like that. But I'm not naive to think that everyone's not trying to look out after themselves in a way. But overall, I think these days people know you come into it. A matter of how long you sort of get in it is another thing. But, so as Carol used to say, if I was still there in November, I was probably right for the next year.
That's how you live by something.
Yeah.
Sometimes December sometimes now as well. You got to push it out.
Yeah, you got to
little bit further these days.
Absolutely.
Mate, it's been amazing chatting today, and can't thank you enough for your time. You've obviously had a big impact on not just me, but I'd have to say thousands of players coming through, yourself and your family, and I haven't even spoken about Lil today, what she's done as well, being the is she welfare manager?
Really,
welfare manager.
Yeah, really proud of her. I know
she's probably the only person that's better than you. She's very
well. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that.
She's amazing.
Her care and and being a nurse too by trade, it certainly helps. But I feel really lucky to. Work with her during the day, and when she calls me Shaney, I know she wants me to do something. So so I know I have to. She wants someone to run someone somewhere or go and pick someone up or whatever. So, but proud of all the kids. Like Scarlett's produced 2 little grandkids, and
they're overseas.
They're in Singapore, and. Tom's, got an amazing business and he's
very good footballer in his own right too. Tom played premiership
Port
Melbourne.
And Gussie, my youngest, she coaches tennis in Long Island near the Hamptons. So
she's probably doing the best.
She's probably is. So really proud of how they've all sort of turned out.
No, mate, you've killed it, and doing such a great job, and now obviously doing a good job with the past players there at the Blues too. So Thank you for your time, mate. Congratulations on what you've achieved, and there's still so much more to go, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Dylan. I hope I wasn't jumping around the place too much.
That's what we do here, mate. That's fantastic. Love it.
Well done yourself.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Samsung and the new Galaxy Watch8 Classic powered by Galaxy AI.